like I always said, Steve, CP4
VP, yes.
Yes.
I think I said that though.
No, I said it.
I don't think so.
I've been saying that
it's
saying
you.
that since the start of this edition.
I don't. The start of the edition, which was when I told you it.
No.
I don't know.
No.
My dice are notoriously bad, and for the most part,
Never noticed.
Never noticed that. Never noticed that.
No.
Eh?
Hey everybody. Welcome to Hyperspace Hobbies. This is Steve.
I'm Space Marine Steve. Hello.
And I am Ian, and we are talking about some awesome stratagems that everyone can use that greatly affect the battlefield.
And they're stratagems that, based on just like general observation, we feel like either one, aren't used to their full potential, or two, kind of underused or underappreciated. However, when they're a core part of your game strategy and you always kind of keep them like simmering at the back of your mind, right? They can be used to phenomenal effect on the battlefield and really eke out some great tabletop wins.
Right. And eking out tabletop wins is what we're talking about with Rapid Ingress, a one command point stratagem where you can enter the battlefield at the end of your opponent's movement phase.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go over exactly how this stratagem works. At the end of your opponent's reinforcement step, so this is after they've brought in all of their units, you get to spend a CP and select one of the units that you have that are waiting in reserves, and then you get to deploy them onto the battlefield. So why is this one of those stratagems, Ian, that have been so successful for you in the past?
Well, many reasons. One of them is it's a kind of tricky deployment that you can do in someone else's turn. And if you move onto the battlefield in your opponent's turn, at the start of your turn and you start of your movement phase, that unit is free to move. If you know what your objectives are or where they are on the table, if your opponent doesn't screen you out properly, you can sneak a Brutalis Dreadnought onto the table, which I've done a couple times with Rapid Ingress. It has both destroyed my opponent because as soon as it gets in combat, it wrecks, and it also can take objectives. That is another big part of Rapid Ingress, is if you take even just a tactical squad, Rapid Ingress them onto the battlefield in a spot where they're not, where the chance of them getting shot isn't very high, and so you have a couple of them left over, and then you steal an objective away from your opponent.
It can also be a phenomenal way to set up like walls. So for example, using units like Inceptors or other things that can land within like or inside the 9-inch kind of bubble that everything emits. What happens is you can actually set up walls where your opponent comes in and gets ready for a charge, and then you could Rapid Ingress right next to like the thing that they're trying to charge and create like a little meat wall
with
right?
your 3-inch meteoric descent.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, and that I'm sure a lot of people out there are thinking now, well, you're throwing away that Inceptor squad.
Yeah, but
because whatever's going to be charging them is probably going to kill them, or now they're tied up in combat.
Yeah.
However, if you're safeguarding one of your own big, more important units, or safeguarding an objective, Rapid Ingressing a 3-inch meteoric descent, that is some cheeky stuff.
It really is.
You've done Rapid Ingress with Terminators as well, quite a few times, to great success.
Yeah. And they can go, it's all about where you put them, because Rapid Ingress is not like a deep strike, because when you deep strike something or you bring something off the edge of the table, most of the time what happens is like you're walking off the edge of the table so that you can shoot and kill something, or you can charge and kill something. It is a very aggressive and it's a very aggressive game plan where Rapid Ingress is a lot more subtle. You're actually doing a lot of staging for your next turn. You're thinking a turn ahead, right? And you're also putting your opponent, hopefully, like out of position. When I say that I do it with Terminators, I definitely do it with Terminators, and I Rapid Ingress them into a building where they can't be shot at, and then they can just walk through the walls of the building to shoot and assault something in the following turn. And it's all about where you put them and what kind of effect they're going to have on the battlefield next turn. It's not about the turn you're in right now.
Yeah, deep strike on your turn for aggressiveness.
Yeah.
If you want to be cheeky, you can Rapid Ingress.
Defensive.
If you're not using Rapid Ingress, just try it out. You never know what you might kind of find in the tricky subtleties of this particular stratagem.
And I find it to be a much better way to get units into combat reliably versus the whole I'm going to just hit deep strike and roll 9 inches to try and make a charge. So my dice are notoriously rough, and I find it so infuriating when you build a game plan around I'm going to deep strike and I'm going to charge. It just does not work for me ever, and I see a lot of players get tripped up. And rapid ingress is a great fix to this problem. Yeah, you've got to think a turn ahead, but you can deep strike, keep them safe, move, and guarantee your charge.
Yes, almost always guarantee your charge.
Exactly.
Which is why I think rapid ingress, one of the most underused, and I think one of the best.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's a very good stratagem.
Overwatch is one of the strongest stratagems. It gets amplified with flamers. It gets amplified with sustained and lethal hits. Doing damage in your opponent's turn,
it's great.
Is awesome. It's very much in the same avenue of rapid ingress. Is you're putting unexpected events into play that your opponent has no way of interacting with.
Yeah. Something that I really like about Overwatch and how I will usually use it, and yes, things like flamers definitely make your opponent think twice about things. Like if you've got a 10-man pack of like Infernus Marines, for example, that have just like piled out of a transport, flamed something, and are now standing there when your opponent goes to move, and you can hit them again with something like that. It's incredible. But it's also a way of making your opponent kind of think through or double think what their actions are a little bit. So something that I will often do when I'm playing in a tournament setting is I will take time to remind my opponent of Overwatch. And there's like, because sometimes there's these little social games, and it's not like a mind game or anything like that. But what you want them to do is you want them to always remember that you have this like ability. So if I have a unit that's maybe got a couple flamers in it, or sustained or lethal hit, something that can actually do something in Overwatch, I'll always make sure, be like, remember these guys, I've got Overwatch money, right? Yeah. And then my opponent goes, oh, right, Overwatch, and has to like think through that. And by making all of those gears turn for your opponent turn after turn, you keep them honest, right?
And there's sometimes, like, let's say you had that Infernus squad and they're right there next to that unit, and your opponent goes, if I move them, and he overwatches them, they die.
Yeah.
So maybe I just won't move them.
I guess
it's either movement and death and chewing up a CP for your opponent, or you can leave them where they are.
Yeah.
Which you can kind of force your opponent to make the worst choice.
Absolutely. And things to always remember is that when you go to Overwatch a unit, it happens either at the beginning or at the end of their movement.
Yes.
Right? Because oftentimes I've seen people try and like run and hide from an Overwatch, and then people go like, oh man, like you're behind the wall, I can't Overwatch you. Be like, nope, you can, because you can do it at the beginning, right?
And if they charge as well.
And if they charge as well. And making sure you keep something open for the charge, it might be always better than the movement thing. But if you're constantly keeping up some of that Overwatch money with CP, and you're always going to keep that little thorn in your opponent's side of, man, they're going to Overwatch me. Oh, man, I don't really want to do that. Like, what do I move first? What do I move second? Is there the right choice? Always making sure that your opponent is thinking about those things will soak up their decision-making power.
And you also, if you know your opponent has that Overwatch game and they're playing it hard, you have to try to figure out ways of drawing it out.
Yeah.
So you can keep all your deep strike guys safe by leaving them in the reserves. Mm-hmm. You can move your guys around to bait out.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they would use Overwatch on you, now you have this relief. Now I can put my reserves wherever I want, because you can only Overwatch one
time. For example, actually, I have a great story about this. So I was playing Mike. For those of us that have been watching for a long time, Mike was on the channel with us quite a bit, and we had like all three of us doing like little talk shows. And I was playing Mike, and he was playing Eldar. And he had a huge pack of Dire Avengers. And all the Dire Avengers, when they Overwatch, they hit on 4s. It's crazy town, right? It's so good. Yeah. It's really, really good. And so I had my Calgar with only 2 wounds left, and he was absolutely going to Overwatch and kill the Calgar. And so I knew that, he knew that, and so what happened is I started moving everything except the Calgar, and then the Calgar was the last thing I went to move. And I went to Mike and I was like, I remained stationary with Calgar. And he was like, well, I'll Overwatch these guys. And I was like, nope,
sorry,
absolutely not.
Not how the game works.
Like, not how the game works. And he was always like, because your opponent always thinks you're going to move something, right? And that was in Mike's head. It was, he's going to move Calgar because he's going to charge with Calgar. I didn't end up charging with Calgar at all because I didn't want him to die to Overwatch. Right. And so the thing is you have to play around how the actual stratagem is worded, right? And making sure you have the knowledge of these root stratagems so that you can play around it and use it to your advantage is everything.
And if you have anything with like sustained hits too, you can laugh your way through some ridiculous Overwatches.
Yeah, like Inceptors with
Inceptors, the Immortal Tesla.
Yeah.
Even
Tau with Kayon.
Yeah. You can get crazy results, almost like Flamer level results.
Out of things like that.
Out of things like that.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah. Overwatch, awesome.
So Epic Challenge is a stratagem that I don't see played very often. I play like a fair amount of Warhammer. I go to a fair amount of events. And it's one that I just don't often see. However, it's one that I have used to like phenomenal effect. Here's the thing with Epic Challenge is it is a wonderful way to just like scoop out important characters from units that you know for a fact you're not going to chew through the whole unit. And it is actually really hard. You have to have a very dedicated unit to chew through a whole unit in combat. To get to the characters, right? And then when you do finally get to the characters, sometimes then they'll have like invols, you just get road bumped, and like I don't know how many games where my opponent goes, yeah, I'm gonna go for assassinate, tries to dig through all of the Space Marines to get to that juicy captain at the end, and then gets speed bumped by one intercessor.
Yeah, with 1 wound left.
And then the character is like, finest hour, right? Where all of that could be avoided if you just took your sick character, epic challenged for 1 CP, and then put all of their attacks directly into your opponent's character.
And some of the characters that are added to units, most of the characters that add to units, amplify what that unit does. One of those Technomancers getting killed in the Wraith squads is awesome. It's something you guys should be doing whenever you, or at least have it in your head. There's so many games where I look at the table and I go, there's no way I'm getting assassination. Yeah. Not a chance. Yeah. Even though it's mid-game, it's like turn 2, turn 3. Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts. All my stuff is there. And then you can go, actually, assassination is quite easy to get.
Yeah.
You could change your mindset on certain things. You're not going to shoot your opponent out of it.
No, not going to happen.
But if you get a good charge and you precision them out,
boom,
you can get assassinate.
So we're going to take that. Let's take the Necron example for a second.
Yes.
So in the Wraith squad, it's a very popular thing in Necron lists right now to take a big brick, 6 Wraiths, and then put 1 Technomancer in them. And what the Technomancer does is give the whole thing a 5-up, feel no pain. Boy, oh boy, is that annoying. And then on top of that too, like with reanimation and stuff like that, the Wraiths can just keep popping back up. And it is so frustrating to try and chew through that. The great thing about a Technomancer, though, when you're playing against it, is that it is very, very, very squishy.
It is very squishy,
right?
Yeah.
It's like 4 wounds with like a 3-up save.
I think it has a 4-up save, but it does have feel no pain because it gives it to the unit.
Yeah. So it has a 4-up save and then a 5-up feel no pain. But like, whoop-de-doo, you just have to do 4 wounds to it. And if you take a good character, like, for example, Calgar, right? I'm going to use Calgar, the best character.
We'll just use a good character.
Really anything, like a Space Marine captain. If you go into a unit with a Space Marine captain, pop the finest hour so he gets like 8 attacks with his power fist or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And then he just slams into the unit, give it all precision for 1 CP, and then he just beats face on the Technomancer, kills it, and then everything else loses its feel no pain.
They wouldn't lose it for that particular phase, because technically combat all happens at once.
Correct, yeah. But they lose it for the game. because the character's gone, reanimation protocol's not bringing him back.
Yeah, he's
Right?
gone for good.
He's gone for good. So unlike the raids where, let's say the captain goes in and uses the same 8 attacks and kills, let's be generous, 2 wraiths, right? In the following turn, they get a wraith back.
Yeah.
So who cares, right?
Kills a wraith and does a bit of damage to the next one.
Yeah, and then heals back up, gets another wraith back, and then you are in frustration junction.
Yeah.
Right? Where this way, it's over. If you're liking what we're doing here at Hyperspace Hobbies, be sure to like and subscribe for more 40k conversations. Very, very, very squishy.